Today I've come over to Gloucestershire in the southwest of the UK. One of the things that makes Gloucestershire so special and current in the big cat phenomenon in the UK is that it's one of the very first counties where the local police actually have a recognition that there are large cats, namely leopards, in the environment. Also Thames Valley Police and in some of the southwest counties, and up north have acknowledged now that there are big cats, but namely Gloucestershire is one of them hotspots. One of the things that's happened in Gloucestershire over the last few years is we've had the wild boar, which have re-established themselves. Now, boar have always been thought to have been an extinct animal, but again we're seeing more and more of them. And there is a specific website in this country that logs reports, and actually, from East Sussex even up to Derbyshire, there are reports now of wild boar reappearing in places where they used to live. Now, today I'm going to talk about some of the cliche critic views on big cats living here, and why a lot of the human arrogant type views come at the big cat research, and actually discuss, them views and why they're not founded. For instance, one of the most common things people talk about when dismissing big cats without even acknowledging the particulars of the subject is climate. One of the first things people say is, it's too cold in England for there to be big cats. Well, just because we see big cats, and we relate big cats to the African savannah quite a lot, because that's one of the easiest places to see them in the wild, doesn't mean that there's big cats not living in other parts of the world. You take any of the species, lynx, Eurasian lynx, lives in Scandinavia, can take much, much colder climates than the UK. Contrary to common belief, the UK actually has a very warm climate. We very rarely get below -10, whereas in, countries like Poland or the Eastern Europe, it can easily get to -20. The puma, the North American mountain lion, yes, you see them in the deserts of California, but you also find them in the Chilean mountain range. It gets to -20 there at least, in the winter time. Even with leopards, you've got the armor leopard, which lives in Russia, but even taking away that, it has longer fur and is adapted, even in India, in Nepal, in the foothills of the Himalayas, it gets incredibly cold. And even in the Sahara, some of the desert leopards, they don't even actually know how many desert leopards there are in the Sahara. It's just impossible to tell, the Barbary leopard. But some of them guys can take very, very cold temperatures, much colder than the UK. So that hypothesis that it's too cold for big cats in this country doesn't stand up. Another one is, where do they go? A lot of people think if there's big cats in this country, where are they? You would turn around and think that they would be marauding, at large, killing things, and you would see impacts of them all around. This is really quite a common one. Now, I can tell you now, if there were leopards and pumas living in this country, you would never see them. It would be very, very rare, and when people do see them, they would report them, and that's why we get sightings of them. There was a girl, and she was on a small student documentary I saw about the Beast of Bucks back in Buckinghamshire, my main research area, and she said that, these animals can't survive on small game. These animals need large prey animals, large game animals, but that's not true. The big cats will always go for the young of the big animals. They don't want to risk getting injured. A roe deer, or some of the epidemic species of deer we have in this country, where there's absolutely thousands of them, these are the deer that are the perfect size for a leopard or a puma. Those sorts of animals are favoured by the big cats. Some of these domesticated animals, they don't have the same appeal for that particular meat. There was an instance in South America where the drug cartels had fed their rivals to lions, and they actually had a problem weaning the lions off of human flesh because they were so used to it. And big cats, they get used to one type of food and they really go for that. It's not something they want to do is just kill loads of farm animals. You know, they understand that, you know, they live near us and they know we're bad news. They try and stay away from us, you know. They're really not trying to try and find us, you know, and really try and attempt to be in our way. Take the wolf, for example. Now, the wolf, there's a lot of debate in the UK, should we reintroduce the wolf? Right, well, a lot of critics or people say there is not enough wilderness in this country for the wolf to be repopulated. Even the Caledonian forest now is only 1% of its former glory. You know, the wolf wouldn't survive. Well, in Poland and Eastern Europe, not only have there been slight reintroductions of the wolf, there's actually been a reoccurrence of wolves travelling from east to west. Now, Germany was the first country that they came back into, and only recently, only a few years ago, via online, we had a report of a wolf being killed on the road in Holland. Now, if these wolves are recolonising areas, now, them border areas of Germany and Holland are not wilderness. You know, they're rural, yeah, but they're not wilderness. And they're very flat areas. Now, looking just behind me, I mean, Gloucestershire in the southwest is not thought as wilderness. It's very rural, but this very undulating patchwork of forest and hills is a lot more wilderness type than some of the Western European border countries, which are very flat in nature. So, you know, the argument that wild animals or even big cats can't be here because where would they go doesn't stand up. A large cat will usually sleep for 20 hours of the day. So all you have to do is work out one place to hide. Now, in this country, we have large tracts of places you can't go, industrial areas. I've talked about this before. All they need to do is just find 20 hours a day of somewhere to sleep. There could be one, you know, up in that oak tree right now with the dense ivy. You probably would never see it. So just try and think of the spatial dynamics of that equation. Where is that cat going to live? Where's it going to hide? Well, it's going to sleep most of the time. So when it is active, you've got to be around during the day, during the night, with night vision, and you've got to cover a lot of ground to see one. Sometimes they're around during the day, and that's when we get these very rare sightings. But they are a rare occurrence, the sightings. So it's not always as black and white as what people think. You know, you'd see them all the time. You wouldn't. They would be hidden in the landscape. What do they eat? This is a great one. You know, I sort of just covered that in the last point. There's a lot of deer in this country. Badgers, foxes, there's so much food in the landscape. A lot of people say, you know, there would be, you know, animals being killed daily. It'd be a bloodbath if there was big cats in this country. You'd find physical signs. Well, there's a lot of roadkill in this country also. Not only do we have epidemic amounts of foxes, deer and badger, which they're quite capable of hunting, and game birds as well. We also have large amounts of roadkill. I did an experiment for the article I wrote, Kill Zone, and I came to the conclusion that any one time there would be 300 kilograms of freshly killed meat on the rural roads of Buckinghamshire alone at any one point in time. Now, also in that article I tried to discuss where pumas and leopards had attacked people in their own places of origin. Now, what I discovered was it always came down to a food issue. So the reason perhaps why people haven't been attacked, you know, in a predatory way or for food is just because they just don't have to. You know, in some of the rural areas like in India, where there's a lot of the bushmeat trade going on for China, and a lot of the animals are getting shot in the hills, leopards are coming to eat the dogs in the cities around India. And when they've taken all the dogs of these rural areas, or they're hungry and they can't catch the dogs because they're very few and far between in them rural areas now, young children are getting taken. Now, big cats are not going to just kill us for the sake of it. You know, if they're that desperate, like the killer leopard of Rangdampur, it was wounded, it couldn't hunt for itself. Now, could that happen in this country? Not with the amount of scavengeable meat there are on our little country roads. I just don't believe it will happen. I think it could happen under other circumstances, book, you know, when the critics say people would be getting killed, animals would die daily, there'd be bloodbaths across the farmlands of Britain, it wouldn't. Trust me, these animals can live on a lot less. In some areas of Turkey, leopards were found to just eat rats around the streets. They're very adaptable creatures. You know, they're not just going to make a big furore and kill everything. You know, it just wouldn't happen like that. So I believe that the fact that, you know, people think that things would be getting killed all the time, there's more than enough food here without them going around killing people or killing people's farm animals. So I really play down that. Now, one of the biggest critic arguments against the big cat researchers is the majority of big cat sightings in this country are black cats. Now, if there are black cats, there have to be spotted cats, because the black cats that would be here would be melanistic leopards. Fine. Now, Rick Minter touches on this in his book, and I think he does it very well. There is a difference between melanism in jaguars and leopards. Now, I'm not going to go too into detail with this in this video, but what I would like to say is there's 2 points to this story I'd like to address. Now, firstly, if you have a lot of the leopards in Southeast Asia are black. It's just in the Malayan Peninsula, some areas of Nepal, and some areas of very thickly, densely vegetated areas like Kenya in Africa, a lot of the leopards are black. Now, obviously, that serves a purpose in wooded areas where you know, it's very dark during the day and night. It's going to help an animal to be black. However, they say that black is more common. Now, that black is not as common, and it probably is not. But what you've got to remember is, if you have 10 black animals and you release them, their offspring are going to be black. That's just the way it works. You're going to get the odd spotted one, but the commonality of the spotted cats is going to be erased if the majority of base animals are black. Now, the black animals were always favoured by the pet trade, by the Victorians. They were more valuable than the spotted leopards. So I would like to postulate that the black leopards were in more numerous number, and in some of the Roman artwork we see around Britain, we see black panthers fighting guys, Roman Trojans, Roman warriors, and for this reason we would postulate that the very sinister look of the black cat was perhaps the main base population that came to the UK in the first place. So I would really play down anybody that would like to say that, you know, there has to be spotted cats, we don't get any spotted cats because, you know, so in that case they cannot be leopards. I have certainly got reports of spotted cats. I actually believe I've got a spotted leopard on camera. And if you go to my website and you go down to the news blog, you'll probably see the images of that cat. So, you know, another point about the spotted leopard is not a lot of people realise what good camouflage that spotted coat is. If any of you go to the zoo and you go to the leopard enclosure, you know, sometimes they're talking about very small enclosures. So a lot of people have a lot of trouble spotting a leopard within a few, you know, square meters. I mean, can you imagine what it's going to be like trying to find one in that? I would like to postulate that the spotted cats actually, in England, I mean, if you place one over there in the corner of that field and then a black cat next to it, you'd probably spot the black cat first. The spotted coat of a leopard is a very, very a truly fantastic product of natural engineering. They're very hard to see in dabbled sunlight with that coat, pretty much impossible. The black coat will stand out more. The fact that the leopards are nocturnal animals probably doesn't make too much of a difference in this country, but I would like to postulate you're going to see the black animals more quicker than if there's a spotted cat there, even though I would like to speculate that there are more black cats in this country because the original base population of cats that became here were black. Now, one of the finishing points I'd like to pick up on, one of the things the critics say, is genetic diversity. Again, Rick Minter's book, great reference for this. You know, in places in the world where there's very few cats or a population of cats in an area left, what you find is this very low genetic biodiversity, which means that a lot of the cats start to be born very small. They don't have the diverse gene pool to keep that population sustained. Now, people argue that if there was only a few animals released into the British countryside, there would not be enough gene pool or enough diversity in that population to, you know, stave off any diseases or any mutations or anything that would, you know, anything that would justify there being a healthy population. So on this point, really, what you've got to look at is, you know, regionality of where the cats came from. Now, there are 7 subspecies of leopard. Now, again, humans, arrogant, we think we know everything. We're still classifying types of leopard and big cats. It's not as simple as this is a type of leopard, there's many subspecies of leopard. Now, they can all interbreed. And of course I believe, and a lot of people do believe, but the sightings speak for themselves, leopards were, over years, released into this countryside. The probability is you would have some Southeast Asian leopards, you'd have some African leopards, you'd have some Arabian leopards, some Persian leopards, some Armour leopards. You would have a base population with a very, very strong genetic biodiversity and gene pool. So even though perhaps, you know, you might start with a few animals, the probability of them being topped up over the years by new releases and a very wide spectrum of geographic gene pool of leopards means actually Britain would have a very, very strong genetic diversity in their cats. So again, you know, the idea that interbreeding and weaknesses and they'd eventually fizzle and die out, not always the case. It could actually be the case that we have an ultra diverse gene pool in our population. So, you know, overall, to sum up, critics, again, you know, it's good to have criticism on the subject, but what you've got to remember is some of these criticisms of big cats living in this country are very cliched, and they're not always based on intelligent hypotheses. You have to look beyond that and really think deeper. And some of the books now, like Rick Minter and Ian Bond's Path of the Panther, they actually look into this, the dynamics of population and how it could work, and perhaps why we get these sightings. So all of them criticisms, as far as I'm concerned, are completely unfounded. Especially the weather. It makes absolutely no difference whatsoever what the weather is doing for these cats. They're more than capable of surviving in any terrain. So on that note, I'd just like to say, critics, we accept your criticism and we'll continuously respond to your criticism, but all of them cliche criticisms aren't founded.